Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Gallup's Called to Coach. My name is Scott Wright, and I'm your producer for today as we broadcast live from the Gallup Riverfront campus in Omaha, Nebraska on March 4th, 2016. The Call to Coach webcast series provides strengths coaches like you with tips, insights, and strategies that you can utilize in your quest to help others discover their greatest talents. If you're joining us on the live broadcast and have any questions or comments during the show, head on over to our live chat room, which is available right below the video window that you are watching right now. And if you are watching a recorded version of this broadcast or you're listening to an audio recording, you could submit your questions or comments via email at coaching@gallup.com. And as always, you can find previous broadcasts and informative blog articles over at our website, coaching.gallup.com. And don't forget to visit center.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. Today, we are pleased to welcome back a familiar face to our coaches, our host, Jeremy Petrosini. Jeremy is a senior learning and development consultant with Gallup. Jeremy, it is great to have you back on the show again. It's been a while, I think maybe 2 to 3 months since you last hosted one of our programs.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I think it was December on our theme Thursday with on Futuristic with Roseanne. So
there you go.
Glad to be back.
Glad to have you back and get you back in the host seat again. And Jeremy, as you know, we're continuing our author series on Called to Coach, and today we're pleased to welcome a new guest to our program. Why don't you introduce our viewers to Becky Jorgensen? She is the author of Live Your Life, The Art of Leveraging Your Strengths to Live Your Purpose.
Yeah, and again, Becky, really glad you are here, as Scott said, kind of doing this author series, and it's really fun that for us as we're continuing to grow that coaching network. Again, so many people that have fumbled onto strengths or intentionally been using strengths for years know that we're now at over 13.5 million people that have taken Strength Finder. But our goal is to really get to a point that we have 1 million coaches to help us reach 1 billion people. And so we love when there's individual coaches, consultants like yourself that not only have branched out after 15 years in the HR world, but took that risk to start your own business, your own coaching consulting business, but love that this last December you were able to publish your book as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very happy to be here today.
You bet. So I'd love to just dive right in, and we'll get into kind of some of the core components of your book and kind of key insights as well. But I'd love for people just to hear some of your story. I know I kind of shared that 15 plus years in HR, but tell us a little bit your story of just kind of background and kind of how you came across not only Strength Finder, but again, even kind of the concept of the show of feeling called to coach. As we always reiterate for people, it really doesn't feel just like a next career stage for you, but I know in our previous conversations it's more about the sense of this is what you were created to do. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. So let me start with my top 5. So my top 5 are strategic, maximizer, responsibility, futuristic, and positivity. So back in 2013, after being in HR for about 15 years, a little over 15 years, I was at a point in my life where I really needed to make a change. And so I decided to leave my corporate job and open up my own consulting business. And it was through networking that I was introduced to a coach. And given that I was new to running my own business, I was like, this is probably a good idea that I get a coach and help me through this process. Well, the first thing that my coach had me do was take Strengths Finder, and I, believe it or not, in 15 years of HR, had never been exposed to the work of Gallup and Strengths Finder, and so it was this aha moment for me. So I spent about 3 months where I was in coaching, and I really learned how to align my dominant talents with my personal and my professional life. And it was through that process that I became very intrigued by the work of Gallup. And so I went into student mode for about 5 months where I called myself SpongeBob SquarePants, where I literally absorbed. I was reading books and watching videos and just absorbing everything I could about the strengths revolution and strengths-based development. And so in April of 2015, I went to Irvine, California. I attended the 4-day accelerated coaching program, and 3 weeks later, I became a certified strengths coach.
And Becky, I know you said initially when you saw your Strength Finder results, you saw your top 5, but what you said it wasn't a surprise that you saw number 6 was then learner.
Yes,
Right?
so
I'm
yeah,
reading everything about
exactly.
it. I'm going to take a 4.5-day course on it, right?
Yeah, you might as well put, you might as well put that learner right up there in that top 5, because it absolutely, and when I look back in the different, the only other 2 careers that I've had, that was a relevant theme where I would just literally take my passion for that industry or that role and just learn everything I could by reading books. I was self-taught in many different ways.
Yeah. Well, and that piece, again, you begin to, and you know this as a coach, it's like you begin to couple that with your maximizer, even your futuristic responsibility.
Yes,
I love that for you. It wasn't just like this would be fun to learn about this, but how can I actually be not only the best coach and consultant, but something you said, and I'd love to hear more about it. How can I be the best me, right? How can I be the best
exactly.
Becky? So talk a little bit more about that. You said you kind of sat down with your report, you read everything about strengths, but specifically when you began to dig into your themes, who you are,
Hmm.
kind of what you do, why you do it, what makes you unique,
Hmm.
what were some of those discoveries, or what walk us through that process for yourself?
Right. So last year, after writing a blog, I had a comment on my blog, and it was from someone in our strengths group, where I was asked very specifically, how would someone know that you purposefully and intentionally develop and live your strengths?
Hmm.
And immediately my strategic brain starts working, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I demonstrate this in writing a response? And so, in an effort to respond, what I did is I took my StrengthsFinder Insight report back out. I printed a brand new, fresh copy and took my highlighter and started doing the same activity that I probably have done now about 5 different times, where I was underlining the different phrases and words that really resonated with me. But this time I viewed my report differently. I put on what I would say a different set of lenses. And I started to be able to see patterns and information in my report that I really hadn't seen before. And so I took out this sheet of paper and I wrote exactly that, those 4 questions, which was really to ask myself, who am I? What do I do? Why do I do it? And what makes me unique? And after going through my report and really being able to then sit back and look at all the highlighted information, I asked myself, can I answer any of these 4 questions
Mm.
from my report? Bam! That was like,
And the answer
bam!
was yes. Yeah.
Yes, I could. And I began to really dissect my
Mm.
report and begin to build bullet lists under each of those questions. And gosh, when I got done, I was really filled with a lot of emotion. I was said, oh my gosh, the answers I've been looking for within are right
Mhm.
here in front
Mm.
of me.
Mm.
My why, my purpose, and really how do I use my strengths to be my best self, and what really makes me unique. And that for me was really transformational. And so it really gave me clarity into my purpose and very much validated my professional alignment and my decision to become a Gallup certified strengths coach.
Mm. I love that. And again, I know, again, the intentional title of your book being Live Your Life, right? I know it doesn't read itself out loud to us, but emphasizing that word your, that it's about who you are, who I am.
Right.
And again, the subtitle of The Art of Leveraging Your Strengths to Live Your Purpose, it wasn't a surprise that for you, when you dug into your top 5 or your top 10, those dominant themes that just are part of your DNA and who you are,
Right.
it lets you live your purpose. Talk a little bit
Mhm.
more about that. That word purpose, I know, is not only in the subtitle. I know all of your website, so BeckyJorgensen.com, where
Mhm.
you've got your kind of independent coaching business. You talk about purpose. I know when you and I were even chatting last week, you talked about kind of how even that activity you just did, or that you'd recommend to us or others,
Mhm.
it really identifies almost our brand, right? Kind of
Right.
who we are, how we show up, why we exist. But talk a bit more about that sense of purpose or branding.
Right, absolutely. So, part of when you talk about really aligning your talents and turning them into strengths and being the best of who you are, and when you're able to really connect with that, you have a sense of purpose that's bigger than just yourself, and that's, I think, a lot of the practicing my strengths that I've been going through in the last year is really recognizing that I can use my my insight and my knowledge to serve other people. And that is something, when I look back in the 15 years of being an HR professional in my short career as a social worker, people were always what I did. It's what I love to
Mm-hmm.
do. And so I knew in my transition from corporate America into owning my own business that there was a reason behind it, and that I had a purpose in helping serve people. So my brand, when I talk about it, is really about inspiring people to never give away their passions, dreams, and hope. Now, before I get into that, one of the things that I know for sure is that when I'm talking to, whether it's just one person, so one person who feels stuck in their personal or professional life, or an entire group of people, maybe managers who are learning about strengths-based development and creating engaged employees, I have one goal in mind, and my goal is to really empower people to take action. Okay, so to make choices, much of like what I talk about in my book, where I was in a point in my life where I had to take action. And I cannot think of a better way to start taking that step than taking StrengthsFinder. But it actually you have to do more than just take StrengthsFinder. There's more that's going to happen. And so in order for true transformation to occur, and in order to really understand why you were put on this earth in the first place and why you do have a purpose, you have to engage in my opinion, a coach, to be able to really walk you through that journey of turning your talents into strengths, to really integrate it into who you are and really understand it and create that language to be able to talk about yourself in a way where you can explain what is different about you, because as human beings, we are all very different. We're very complex. But when you have a language to do that, and you begin to really integrate that into everything that you do, you discover that purpose. And for me, that's what life is about. And I do strongly believe that we were all put on this earth for a reason, and we all have a purpose. Unfortunately, many people walk through life without discovering that. And I think that connection to StrengthsFinder is really where I have really had an appreciation for the value of humankind and walking people through my own journey by writing my story, and then again talking about this journey of transformation, which when I've talked to many other coaches who have become strengths coaches have talked about going through as well.
Yeah, and that piece, I know you kind of alluded to this, but kind of that kind of theory that we teach, again, that strengths aren't just something you took an assessment, you get a top 5 and boom, you're strong.
Right.
But that idea that it points you, again, even the StrengthsFinder assessment points you to those natural talents that when you invest in them, they turn into strength.
Yes.
And I love that even for you, you're saying, even this was my profession, it's what I did, focused on human beings. You obviously were living out some of your talents and strengths, but the language that StrengthsFinder gave you to kind of just shine a light on that specifically, who am I, right? Who is Becky?
Mm-hmm.
How does she show up? Where are you at your best? That commitment, and even like you said, to personally be coached, but then for you to want to invest that into other people, I think that's where, again, you see people come to life. There's a lot of other, assessments out there. One of the individuals I was actually coaching, an executive this morning, and he said I had taken another assessment, or he listed off about 3 or 4 he had taken, but he said StrengthsFinder's telling me something that I'm not just introverted or extroverted, right? Or he said it's not just here are my two labels of who I
Right.
am and they're the same as yours, but he was looking at the intricacy of even he met somebody else in his company that had 3 of his top 5, but he said these other 2, and then we looked at his full 34. He's like, wow, my other 6 through 10 really make me unique. And so I think it's that activity you said of just going back through. We have our clients do it anyways, but highlighting for
Hmm.
ourselves as coaches, what's my brand? How do I show up? I love that from almost the stepping off point.
Right.
I'd love to hear too, and I know you've thought through this, but that change and purpose and creating the future doesn't happen through that one and done activity of just doing that. But so when you think of, kind of, I guess, your best practices every day, and again, this is kind of insight you could share with the other coaches out there. What's one thing that you try to do to really ensure that you're playing to your strengths and living out your life purpose? So you've got the statement, it's there, but
Hmm.
how do you make sure you're actually living it out?
Well, Jeremy, the one thing that I do is I actually wear a ring with the word hope engraved in the ring, and I
Yeah.
wear it every day. Now, there's a short story behind this, and then I'm going to get into how I define hope. But it was through networking again where I met a woman and I met her a couple of times in a networking event, and naturally she asked if I would like to meet with her one-on-one for coffee, and we did. And I think this was maybe the second or third time that I had seen her at this one particular networking event, and she gave me a box, and I was a little taken aback. She's giving me a gift. I really
Right.
don't know her. And I open up the box, and inside the box there's a ring with the word hope in it.
Hmm.
And all I could do is just, I mean, the ring was beautiful, and all I could do is just sit there and stare at it. And I looked up at her, and she said, Becky, that's what you do. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, when you walk into a room and you begin to talk about what you're so passionate about, you're giving people hope. Well, let me tell you, that conversation stuck with me for a very long time.
Hmm.
And it's something that I have never forgotten as I began to rebrand my business from being a
Hmm.
consultant, for small businesses to being a Gallup certified coach. So as I was doing that rebranding, it's just something that really stuck into me. So every day I wear a ring that's got the word hope engraved in it, and it reminds me of my purpose, which again, as I said before, my overarching statement is to inspire people to never give away their passions, dreams, and hope. Well, I've gone as far as actually defining what does hope mean, and I I will say that H stands for happiness, O stands for opportunity, P stands for purpose, and E stands for excellence. And why is that? Well, because I believe that having hope fuels happiness. Secondly, I believe that by discovering your talents, it opens up the door for opportunities where you can learn, you can grow, and you can serve other people.
Hmm.
And thirdly, is that when you actually do turn your talents into strengths and understand what really makes you unique, it's your stepping stone to gain clarity into your purpose in life. And finally, by playing to your strengths, by living your strengths every day, you are sharpening your points of excellence, right? And when I talk about excellence, I'm talking about that you are unlocking the door to your greatest potential for success. And that's what hope is. And that is the proponent or the vision and the mission that I share as part of a coach, as a consultant, and as a trainer.
Yeah, I love it. And again, it's both true to who you are and how you've committed to operate, as a coach and a consultant. But what a fantastic, simple tool as well that any of us as coaches can use as well. Kind of walking people through that. Do they have hope? I know, Jim Collison, who produces our show as well. He and I were on site with 100 individuals in IT for a local company in Omaha that were all, have all been notified that the company's moving to a different city. They're
Mm-hmm.
in career transition. So
Yeah.
they blatantly, many of them are without hope right now.
Mhm.
This has been their career, and so helping them think about what does that mean. I love those just four simple words of happiness, opportunity, purpose, and excellence.
Right.
I'd love to hear too, and then just a couple quick, whether it's a story or two from you of how you've integrated either that philosophy or just even your coaching, but with maybe one or two of your clients and just kind of the
Mhm.
impact that that's brought. And then Scott, I know you said there's a couple questions in chat that we can kind of go to, but share with us, I guess, just kind of from a practical perspective, taking some of your thoughts, research findings, again, that you share in the book. So in your coaching practice, whether that was with an individual or a team, because I know you
Mhm.
do a lot of team sessions and training as well.
Mhm.
Share with us, I guess, just an example of the impact that that's had.
Okay, so I talk a lot. I do both the individual coaching and then also going in and really talking about employee engagement and
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy talking with companies about strengths-based team development. And the reason for that is because I connect very much so from my 15 years of being in HR to people who are not engaged. And even in my individual coaching, I'm working with people who are typically in career transitions or working with students who have taken StrengthsFinder and they're kind of in that process of deciding what are they going to do the rest of their life, and
Yeah.
really helping them be able to see how they can use their strengths now, develop them, so that when they're making that first career choice, it's going to align with who they are. And so in talking with students and helping them make those connections to like a past success, and then seeing if they can identify, or even in my coaching practice, seeing if people can identify how they've already been using their talents is really rewarding for me. And so last month I was coaching a student in London, and about 2, 3 hours after our coaching session ended, I got an email from her. And she said to me that, she just wanted to thank me. And, it's these little things, these little notes that just keep you going, that makes you really know you're doing something that you're meant to be doing. And she
Yep.
said to me, on my way home, she's like, I have processed all the information that we talked about, and it really made me realize that I haven't had such an interesting, deep conversation in a long time.
Mm.
And she said to me, I felt really understood. And her current living situation that she's in, she had indicated that she hadn't been feeling understood, and that she was relieved that somebody still understood her. Now, mind you, the student had never met me before. This was
Right.
our first
Yeah.
interaction.
Yeah.
And she talked about the fact that she really loved talking to me. And the last line is what really got to me. She says, I hope you inspire many more young individuals as you inspired me today.
Huh. Huh.
So that's living out your strengths. That's putting your strengths every day to work. That's knowing what your purpose is. And even if it's one person that you made an impact on for that day, you made an impact.
Yeah, and there's a couple things with that too. I mean, one is, like you said, you didn't know her before. I recently had the chance to interact with some coaches that most of the coaching they do in their practice are long-term contracts. So they're have clients that they talk to once a month or twice a month, and as you know, like even we share this in our Gallup coaching course, a lot of times, especially when people want coaching from Gallup, it's 1 hour. We actually
Yeah.
had one client that said, we'll give you 45 minutes, right? But it's basically kind of more introductory, talking to people about their strengths report. And what was interesting is one of these other coaches said, how can you even create impact in 45 minutes or an hour? And I said, it's not, again, I'm a maximizer, so I said it's not as ideal
Right.
as a long-term coaching contract, but change can still happen. And what was
Yeah.
interesting, we actually even set up, and you experienced this in the class, but even when we set up quick little 10-minute coaching sessions, and here's a couple questions you can ask somebody, it's amazing just the depth of where you can invite somebody to go within their own life. And again, strengths can accelerate that conversation.
Yes.
And what you said, both for your own life and for this gal in London, is who you are at home is the same as who you are in your life. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's that personal piece of she's saying, when I'm experiencing my home life, wow, I hadn't thought about that. But having that rich conversation, somebody to listen to, somebody to kind of ask those core components becomes, such a fantastic, kind of inspiration, or even her words, right? A way that breathes life into her and really creates change for the future.
Right,
So,
absolutely. I mean, and I get 1 hour. I get 1 hour to make as much impact with the coaching the students that I do. But it's when I'm able to really use my own talents to connect with what they're saying and then bring a different insight into asking those questions, those very key questions. They start to, I've had even students say to me, like, I feel like I've known you forever. Like, you know so much about me.
yeah.
And I'm like,
Who told you all of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that strategic brain working, making those connections, and, being able to build that rapport quickly and get them to really engage in the conversation, and go through, I have about a half hour to get as much in about the strengths piece before I turn into helping them with the resume and their cover letter. So, I mean, there's more that's going on in just that hour. But, here's just one example of being able to make that impact.
Yeah. Yeah, and that piece too, I know I shared this with you, but again, back to your message on personal purpose or brand, is it does become something like you said, just language you can put into cover letter, put into your
Yes.
resume. I have the opportunity to teach twice a year a course for MBA students, and it's just on strength-based business development, but at UCLA and UC Irvine, just do a one-day kind of intensive. But we take them through not only Strength Finder, but having them kind of craft that brand statement and doing
Right.
exactly what you were saying you do and encourage people to do is highlight those keywords, use your own language now. Don't say, I'm Jeremy, I'm a maximizer, strategic, futuristic,
Right.
but using your own words to go, that's who I am. And that there's a
Yes.
commitment and a promise where you're now just not putting the same language everybody else puts on their resume, or you're not pretending like we're all hard workers and great with people, but you're
Right.
making statements that are true about who you are and your own brand.
Right, and exactly that is, one of the points that I share with the students, after I ask them, what was their first impression, how do they resonate with their report. One of the points that I share to them not only is the 1 in 33 million people only will have the top same 5 themes as you, and of course,
Yep.
undoubtedly, I get that's crazy response.
Yeah.
But I also share with them, especially if I have shared talent themes in my top 5, is I share that piece around the fact that you can read my report and say you could read 5 other people's reports with that shared theme, is that none of our reports will read the same. And I think that drives home the fact that this is a very customized and individualized report. This is tapping into how these talents are playing out in you. And when I get to that cover letter piece, one of the things I say, especially in my notes back to them, is take out that Strengths Insight report again, and I'll pull out a couple of sentences from their report, especially if it's something that makes sense for the industry that they're applying for in terms of a job, is I'll kind of write it out and I say, okay, now I'm turning this sentence from third person into first person. Listen to here. You can describe yourself with this sentence, and I'll read it, and then I'll encourage them. Now, can you think of a time when you did that? Back it up. So, here's a sentence about who you are. I enjoy, creating innovative ideas, for example, and then talk about a time you did it. So that's how I connect their information, again, driving home that this report should not just be put in a drawer and forget about, but here's your language. These reports are about you. Take some of these phrases and build a life example off of it. Now you're not just talking about being a maximizer or being organized. You're putting meat and depth behind those words, and they mean something to the reader. They mean something to the interviewer.
Yeah, Yeah, and I'll reiterate that piece of helping them again connect the being to the doing.
Yes.
Obviously, you heard in the accelerated course how much we emphasize that, and Kurt Leesville was always so good at understanding, again, if strengths points to their being, who am I? Even again, coming back to that brand promise piece, it's like, what do I do? So as
Yeah.
companies have a brand statement, it's not just about who they are, but it's what do they provide for me? What do they do?
Right.
What's the service, or kind of promise that they're creating? And it does give people the how can I apply these strengths? How do I actually
Right.
live them out in my daily life? So, Scott,
Absolutely.
any questions out there from chat that we want to?
We absolutely do, and people are really kind of latching on to some of this student coaching that you do and kind of asking some questions about that. Joe in our chat room also chimed in just a second ago and said that when he was first introduced to his strengths and went on his strengths journey, the very first thing he did was add those to his resume and help describe who he is through his strengths. So that's definitely something that resonates with the folks out there that are listening to this. Sticking on the student question and topic here for a second, one of the things that's come up, and Jeremy, I know we deal with this quite a lot, and it's a very question, so I'd like you to kind of give Gallup's approach to this question, but then Becky also, since you do work with students, how you kind of understand this and share it with people. But the question has come up about the fact that you're dealing with students, you're coaching students who are obviously typically younger, and do strengths change over the course of time, and how do you if you're helping them make some career choices or doing something now based on what their strengths are, do those strengths have the possibility of changing over the course of time, and are you giving them assistance now that maybe later in life if their strengths have changed, that they may be in a different place in life later on. Jeremy, possibly talk about how Gallup kind of views that question first, and then Becky, you can
Sure.
kind of help.
Yeah, so real quick from a Gallup perspective, and this question comes up a lot, so it's great that you asked it, because I think oftentimes even when we know the answer, there are people that will take it, especially when you look at specific themes, people with a lot of analytical, they might be those skeptics, right? When, like you said, Becky, 1 in 33.3 million, they start doing the math to go, wait a minute, is that even possible? And, but statistically, and again, this is what I love about Gallup, everything we do is, has so much research and science behind it. We've got a technical report just called the Clifton Strength Finder Technical Report. I always say it's great reading for many of us when we want to go to sleep at night, but it really digs into the intricacies of this. So assessments like Strength Finder or even other assessments like that have what's called a test-retest reliability, which is essentially saying if I took it again, would I get a completely different set of results? And if I took it again 10 years later, would I get a completely different set of results? Our test-retest reliability is about a point, somewhere between a 0.72 and 0.76. What that means is if you look at somebody's top 10, about 7 or 8 of their top 10 are going to stay the same. Now, they may shuffle around, that your number 2 might be your number 5. And again, what we teach in our coaching courses is really when somebody sees their top 5 or even their top 10, I always equate it to the kind of those are your primary ingredients in the cake. I don't care which order you throw them in the bowl, they're still all there, right? So that element of they may shift around a little bit. Same thing at the bottom. You'll see kind of those themes shift at the bottom. What we would not expect to see happen, and again, we've tested it, we have not seen this happen, is where you'd see drastic shifts, like something in somebody's top 10, for my futuristic, for instance, that it would drop to the bottom, and context, which is really low for me, would jump up. So you typically see kind of the bottom stays the same, the top stays the same, and neurologists have pointed us to the fact that really after about age 16 or more around age 18, that the neurological pathways of your brain that have kind of been ingrained really don't change that much. So Dr. Harry Chugani, actually from Wayne State outside of Detroit, he's a professor of neurology, he simply says the roads that get used the most, so think about the cities we all live in, the roads you get used the most get widened, and those that don't fall into disrepair. So context for me is something I was not really driven by that as a kid. Kind of looking back, it was more for me about dreaming, future thinking. if I decided today at age 42 that I want to become a historian, I might get a little bit better at that, but it's probably not going to move to the point that it's in my top 10. I do it as natural and with as much passion and energy as some of the themes that are near the top, like futuristic. So Becky, what else would you add to that with?
Right, and I agree. I have had well, first of all, I would like to say that the students that I am coaching are university and college students, so they're a little bit of the older, on the older side of the student range. So I just wanted to make that key distinction there. Number two is that I have had students that have taken it for a class or a reason, a couple of years ago, and then they are asked to take it through the program that I'm coaching them through, and they'll say, why are there differences? And from my own experience in having taken it twice in about a 6-month period of time, and I've never taken it again, I don't need to, but that's exactly what happened. Is once I got my 34 themes in rank order, exactly what I discovered is the 2 that had slightly shifted were actually within my top 10. And so I just revealed in the second time taking it talents that are already up in that top 10. And so I definitely think that's, from my own experience, that's what has happened. And for me, in looking at coaching the students, there's 2 key things that I do when I'm working with them. One is once I understand that they do agree that this report, this assessment is absolutely indicative of who they are, is asking that very key question about how they can link their dominant talents and this information that we're talking about during our call to a past success, and really getting them to see the connections of their talents to that past success. And then I like to do the balconies and the basements exercise with them, because I think that's a very telling exercise when they're able to see when their strengths are used productively, and then also having that self-awareness of when they are not using their strengths productively, or when it can go down into that basement. And that is a very rich conversation that I have with them. But then kind of transitioning out of that conversation into really helping them understand how they can use their strengths in the workplace, and looking at the 4 domains of team strength in terms of influencing, executing, relationship building, and strategic thinking, and having them actually identify, if they can, it may need a little bit of my assistance, but identifying, which of those of their dominant themes actually play out, and then talking about partnerships that when they're working with other people. And then lastly is really just asking them that question. Can you see how these strengths will help you in your industry of choice, in the education industry, or your future career choice? Can you see how these might help them? So it's not me confirming or disconfirming their where they're going in terms of their education. It's really getting them to just make that connection that they can use these talents, these dominant talents, that when they're using them in their industry, how is it going to help them? And can they really see that there's certain talents that they have that are going to help propel them to being successful? So I want to make that distinction, because I think that is very important. Is it doesn't really there's some jobs with like sales where people will have this perception that you have to have a certain set of skills, but it's not about having necessarily all those skills. It's how do you use your talents in what you are doing? How do you maximize and use your talents to be able to do the best work that you can do? That I think is the key point.
Yeah, that piece too, and I wonder even times when the question comes up, like, will these change over time? I love that you're following up, Becky, with questions, because I always want to know, like, why do you wonder? And you'll hear people go like, well, I thought I would have had strategic, or in my company, strategic is one of the competencies you have to become a managing director, or whatever the role is that you're maybe aspiring toward. And the reality is there's a difference between your strengths indicating how you do something
Right.
versus can you do something. And
Right.
so just like you just said, people might go, well, to be effective in sales, I need to have woo, right? The ability to win others over. I loved, and again, Kurt Leesveld, who I mentioned earlier, Kurt would step in front of a classroom and people would wonder, like, he must have woo and positivity really high. He's so charming and wins people over quickly. And Kurt would blatantly share with people woo was way down his list. And initially, when he started consulting and being in the classroom a lot in front of large groups, he needed to assess, like, can I even do this job? The reality is, he said there were certain times, and he did exactly what you just did. He looked at where have I been successful at winning people over, where people said, gosh, you were. He said what he did is he got there early. He used his relator to connect one-on-one with people, or in groups of 2 or 3, and he used his learner to say, I just want to learn about them. So he would meet you, Becky, grabbing a cup of coffee, say, where are you from? Where'd you, what excited you about signing up for this class? And all of a sudden, it would feel like he knows you, so now he's more personal. You would feel like he kind of won me over because he actually listened to you, right? Just like your client said, thank you for listening. But that combination for him of relator, right, with that learner, so using a relationship building theme and a strategic thinking theme, looked like influencing of woo, but he got there differently. And so separating out for people, it's not about can you do it or can't you, or do you need to have a certain set of strengths, but answering for people, who are you and which of your strengths have you leveraged in the past to do that, or which of your strengths can you leverage to do that moving forward?
Right. And absolutely, with my private clients, I love doing the theme pairing and getting on expanding your strengths and using that as kind of that next level, of giving them now another set of language, another set of descriptive sentences to be able to understand how their talents are all playing, together, and that they're not existing in isolation. And I use that database a lot.
That's great.
With people, and I've done it on myself, believe it or not. I think I paired my top 15. I paired together in the different strategies of doing it. It took a while, but I did it. But again, it's really understanding that you can do. Yes, you have to add skills, you have to add knowledge, you have to add practice, but when you can leverage and use your strengths to the best of your ability, I like to say that the possibilities are limitless. Limitless.
Yeah, and that expanding your strengths resource too, and Scott, I'll let you then chime in with other questions, but for people that aren't familiar with that, you can actually access that online, so you can purchase it. It's a Kindle book that comes with, when Becky was talking about the database, kind of has this cool little interactive tool both on the Kindle app as well as there's a website link. So you can just kind of pick any 2 of the 34 themes, and it will give you these real kind of powerhouse statements that, again, both for your clients, but again, back to that self-development piece you talked about earlier, it's great to do it on yourself as well.
Yeah, so. It is. It's a great tool to, again, it's just a great reminder. I won't do anything with a client that I haven't tried myself and kind of tested. It's just maximizer, I guess.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I wanted to get in, there's been multiple questions on this real quick, so I wanted to see, Becky, right at the beginning when you started, you made mention of 4 short questions that you ask, I think, to yourself or to the people you coach, and people were really interested in those 4 questions, and they went by pretty quick. So could you just give those 4 questions to us again, and then after the show, just in case anybody's wondering, I'll throw the 4 questions into the chat room after the show, and then you can get them there also, so you don't have to furiously write down anything right now. But those 4 questions, people are really interested in those again.
Okay. Who am I? What do I do? Why do I do it? And what makes me unique?
Great. Yeah, lots of people were commenting on that, so I was glad we could get those back in again. I think that's been great. Jeremy, Becky, anything else sort of to wrap things up today? Do you have any other comments?
I was just going to say those are great questions to even ask your clients, right?
Right. And can I just add a little bit piece there? So when I talk about, who am I and what do I do, I relate that to working within my strengths. The how I do it is how do I intentionally use my strengths, and the why is aligning my strengths to my purpose. And what makes me unique is really the interplay of my talents that have now been turned into strengths.
That's powerful.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Becky, for joining us today for a very great program. It was inspired a lot of talk in our chat room here that I think will continue also. I'd like to remind everyone to visit our website, which is gallupstrengthcenter.com, for all your coaching resources. And you can always find links to our social media sites as well as our prior recordings and blog articles on our website, coaching.gallup.com. And please join us on March 18th for our next Call to Coach broadcast, where we will welcome back Gallup Talent Development Architect Dean Jones. Dean always has really great insights to share with our coaches. He is responsible for developing and building all of the training programs that we teach in our courses that we hold. And we look forward to connecting with you again in a future broadcast. Thank you for joining us today. Goodbye, everyone.